Hey everybody, it's Alfred Jr. back with another edition of the Metropolitan Report. And once again, I implore all of you to go down below, hit the subscribe button. That way, every time there's a new video or a new episode of the podcast on the channel, you'll be one of the first ones to know. So again, hit that subscribe button. Sound off in the comments if you have your own take, if you agree or disagree on anything I say. And most importantly, share this podcast with fellow Met fans, baseball fans, sports talk podcast fans, and anybody else you could think of. I greatly appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Metropolitan Report. I am Alfred Jr., and I'm just going to get right into it. The Mets are free falling faster than Tom Petty. I remember a point in time where this Mets team was 21 games over 500. Now, the way I'm talking, you would have thought that was maybe 4 months ago, 5 months ago. You didn't think this was the end of the season. But no, it was a couple of weeks ago. The Mets were 21 games over 500 with the best record in all of baseball, best pitching ERA in all of baseball, both starting rotation and bullpen, and everything just seemed to be fine. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, things have taken a turn. Entering today, which is Wednesday, July 2nd, 2025, this New York Mets team is in second place in the NL East, sitting at 48 and 37, 2 games behind the 50 and 35 Philadelphia Phillies. So things aren't too bad. Well, things are very bad, but luckily for us, the rest of the division hasn't been world beaters. But the Mets 2 games behind the 50 and 35 Philadelphia Phillies entering today. And today is going to start a crucial stretch of Mets baseball. This Mets team went from 21 games over 500 a couple of weeks ago to entering today 11 games over 500. And I have not liked what I've been seeing the last 15 or so games. Changes have to be made. Somebody in the front office has got to do something because this is just unacceptable to go into a stretch you started 21 games over 500 and now you've gone. I mean, you had a couple of wins sprinkled in there, but you went from 21 games over 500 in about 2 weeks to 11 games over 500. It's unacceptable. Somebody's got to do something. Somebody's got to be held accountable. And this all started back on June 13th. This started on June 13th. And that was the first loss in this horrible stretch when the Mets played the Tampa Bay Rays and got swept that series. Again, this is just unacceptable. The Mets have two problems. The offense, I mean, granted, the bottom of the order was already cold, but now everybody that's not named Juan Soto is cold. And the pitching is in shambles. Let's talk first about the pitching. This Mets pitching staff has been so horrid that over this past weekend, they allowed 30 runs. Now, who did they play this past weekend? For those of you who don't keep up on every day-to-day Mets baseball news, they didn't play the Dodgers. They didn't play the Yankees. That's coming up this weekend, by the way. They didn't play any world-beating team. They played the last in the NL Central, the cellar dwellers of the NL Central. They played the Pittsburgh Pirates, one of the worst offenses in baseball, scored 30 runs 30 runs on this Mets pitching staff. You look at the final scores from each of this past weekend's games. On Friday, the Pirates beat the Mets 9-1, Saturday 9-2, Sunday 12-1. A team whose best offensive player is old man Andrew McCutchen put up 30 runs in 3 games. Alexander Canario, who we had no room for out of spring training, had his revenge series against this Mets club over the weekend. He said, "Hey guys, thanks for letting me go. I owe you one." A team who will not be playing baseball come October, and they know that from now, put up 30 runs on this Mets club. Unacceptable. Who were the culprits? Now, a couple videos ago on this channel, I did a video discussing the state of the Mets pitching staff. Okay? Gave my thoughts on every pitcher that we had at the time of that recording on the 40-man roster. But this egregiousness on Friday's game against Pittsburgh, David Peterson, 4 2/3 innings, couldn't even make it 5. 5 earned runs. Blade Tidwell. We're going to talk about him later in depth. 3 1/3, 4 runs, 5 hits. It's crazy they only used 2 pitchers and they gave up the 9 runs between the two. Saturday, another 9 runs. Paul Blackburn, who I've said it from the beginning when he was battling Tyler McGill in spring training. Blackburn, I understand coming off a spinal leak injury, should not be on the major league roster. Paul Blackburn had 1 good start this season. Ironically, it came against the Dodgers. He struck out Shohei Ohtani twice. I sat there and watched that game and said, all right, I might be wrong. I could be wrong. Blackburn must have heard me. He's going to show the world. And what has he done since then? Not a damn thing, except give up runs and be a human piñata for opposing offenses. Blackburn was so bad on Saturday against the Pirates. 1 inning pitched, 6 hits, 3 runs. Jose Butto. Butto is the one pitcher in this Mets bullpen, not named Edwin Diaz, that when he comes in the game, I'm not nervous. And I said this on the State of the Pitching Staff video. I said it. Jose Butto is one of 2 reliable bullpen arms that we have. No issue there. Brandon Waddell, 3 innings, no runs, 1 hit, 3 Ks. I said it in the State of the Mets Pitching Staff video. I like Brandon Waddell because he doesn't give up that many runs and he can eat innings. That guy is the long reliever this team needs. No issue with Waddell, just like no issue with Butto. And I said it before. You can go back and watch it. Reed Garrett, who's struggled lately, gave us a scoreless inning on Saturday. Maybe he's coming back to form. But my, oh my, Huascar Brazoban. Huascar Brazoban was a guy who about 2.5 weeks ago had an ERA under 1. Now you put him in a game and it's guaranteed disaster. Brazoban pitched a third of an inning on Saturday. 4 runs on 2 hits. He walked 2. What in the hell has happened to Huascar Brazoban? Maybe this is the real Huascar Brazoban. Maybe his early season success this season and his second half or not even second half, but last month and change of last season was all a fluke. He fooled us all. Huáscar Brazaban fooled us all. Maybe this is the real Huáscar Brazaban. Thanks, David Stearns, because you got him for cheap because he came from the Marlins, a team that isn't trying to win. They don't want anything for anybody valuable. We get that's not named Sandy Alcantara. We get it. But Huáscar Brazaban has been god-awful the last 3 weeks. The Mets have been making statements, sending Francisco Alvarez and Luis Angel Acuna down to AAA. Maybe we need to send Brazaban down to Syracuse back to the farm to see if he can get his stuff together. Or maybe he don't want to go to Syracuse. He's a veteran. He can say, I mean, he's only been around since 22, but all right, whatever. He doesn't want to go to the minors. We designated for assignment. You have designated a lot of people for assignment, especially pitchers lately. I don't get it. I sincerely don't get it. What it's like Huáscar Brazaban magically suddenly just developed the yips. I don't understand. The Mets have been so quick to designate pitchers, especially for assignment. Jose Castillo is gone. Richard Lovelady was DFA'd and brought back. Jose Castillo DFA'd. And even Colin Poche, who pitched the end of this game, 2/3 of an inning, two runs on 2 hits and 2 walks. He was DFA'd right after the game. We're talking about Colin Poche, who was a former closer in Major League Baseball for the Tampa Bay Rays. He gave him 1 game and didn't even give him a further chance and got rid of him. So why not get rid of Brazaban? It's not like he's some high-priced free agent or the second coming of Trevor Hoffman or Rob Nen. He's not an elite talent, obviously. And we were singing the praises of Huáscar Brazaban on this show not that long ago, and I feel like an idiot because he fooled me too, and I usually don't get fooled very often. But let's go to Huáscar Brazaban, who is now up to a 3.83 ERA for the season. We're going to look at his recent game logs. He opened the month of June with a 1.30 ERA. Since then, his ERA for the season is 3.83. His ERA for the month of June is 13.50. How is it acceptable to have a reliever having a 13.50 ERA in a month? We're in July now, so he can't make it any worse. But it's unacceptable to carry a pitcher out of your bullpen with a 13.50 ERA for the month. Brazaban went scoreless in May. 1.80 ERA in April. 1.26 in May. And 13.50 in June. Brazaban had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 appearances in the month of June. And in 9 appearances, he pitched 8 2/3 innings and gave up 13 runs and walked 12. That's David Stearns. That's Major League worthy bullpen arm, right? And in the midst of a flurry of send-downs and designated for assignments, Brazaban has survived. Like I said in that State of the Mets pitching staff video, I'm going to reiterate it. If it's not Diaz, if it's not Buto, and I'll even throw him back in there because I've seen improvement. If it's not Reed Garrett, so if it's not Buto, Garrett, or Diaz, anybody else that come and Waddell, if there's anybody else coming out of that bullpen, I am nervous. Huascar Brazaban, what a joke. Getting back to the main point I was trying to make, because if I keep yelling, I might have an aneurysm. Then on Sunday's game, now this was about 12 hours after Francisco Lindor called this players only meeting and obviously did nothing. The only run scored, Luis Torrens' home run. More on that in a bit. Frankie Montas. Now, I made a video on this channel, and I've been discussing it the last couple of weeks. Frankie Montas struggling in AAA, Syracuse. I believe his ERA was 12.05 and 6 AAA starts. Comes to Atlanta last week. Pitches 5 scoreless innings in Citi Field. And everybody's like, oh, Alfred, you were wrong about Montas. You didn't give him a chance. This is why I didn't give him a chance, because I knew who Frankie Montas was from the very beginning. 12.05 ERA in Syracuse. And yeah, he had a decent start against Atlanta at home. But like Paul Blackburn, his good friend, decent season debut, downhill from there. Montas, 4 innings on Sunday, 6 runs on 7 hits. His strikeout to walk ratio was a bit better, but you can't walk guys when you're throwing it down the middle and they're getting base hits left and right. 5 strikeouts to 1 walk, so that's encouraging, but 6 runs on 7 hits in 4 innings, not acceptable. This is the and I said it. He couldn't get the little leaguers out in rehab assignments. What made anybody think that this guy could just stroll onto a major league mound and find some type of success? But people were calling me haters. People said, let's have a wait and see approach. That first start, everybody was like, ooh la la. Not me. In relief, Richard Lovelady, who was designated for assignment and brought back because, David Stearns is playing carousel with this bullpen. Richard Lovelady, 2 runs on 5 hits in 2 innings. Dead Neil Nunez, or Dud Neil, as I like to call him, 1 inning, 2 runs, 2 hits. And then because, you don't want to exhaust the bullpen any more than you had to, even though the next day, which was Monday, was an off day, Mendy gave up. He put his hands up in the air. He waved the white flag and said, all right, Travis Jankowski, you go pitch because our bullpen obviously can't. And I'm not going to get mad. Jankowski's an outfielder. When has Travis Jankowski ever pitched? And even so, his frame was better than a lot of other pitchers we've seen in the Mets bullpen lately. 1 inning, 2 runs on 2 hits. This Mets pitching stinks. I'm going to say this, and I hope that David Stearns somehow finds this video. You want to look at the starting rotation. Kodai Senga's on the injured list. Granted, it's a grade 1 hamstring strain. He'll be back faster than we can blink. Tyler McGill going to be out for a little while. Sean Manaea still rehabbing. Griffin Canning, and let's pause for a second. Griffin Canning tore his Achilles against the Braves last week. Shortly after we had our Metropolitan Report episode, we wish him a speedy recovery. And it's a shame because Canning was here on a 1-year contract, and Griffin Canning, who was one of the absolute worst starters in all of Major League Baseball last season, had a heck of a turnaround this season. Griffin Canning, he's out for the year with an Achilles tear, but His final numbers for the season: 7-3 win-loss record, 3.77 ERA, 76 and a third innings pitched, 70 strikeouts in 16 games started. Griffin Canning, ladies and gentlemen, I think would have won Comeback Player of the Year if he was able to finish this season out and keep those numbers on pace. Griffin Canning was a surprise of Major League Baseball this season after what we saw of years past when he was a Los Angeles Angel of Anaheim. Nobody would have expected a 7-3, 3.77 ERA from Griffin Canning at this point in the season. He was brought in to be a depth piece, had to compete in spring training to make the team. If Montas and Manaea didn't get hurt, Canning might have been DFA'd or started in Syracuse. We don't know. But Griffin Canning showed a lot of heart this season, a lot of improvement. And it's a shame that he was on a one-year deal because I think even if it wasn't with the Mets, somebody would have gave him a multi-year contract after this season was over. He was able to keep that up. That was the one diamond in the rough David Stearns had found this offseason. But Griffin Canning, gone for the rest of the season at a time when major stars in another sport are tearing their Achilles left and right. Griffin Canning tears his coming off the mound to field a ground ball, but Canning done for the year. That leaves this rotation with Clay Holmes, who I have no issue with, David Peterson, and then we have Paul Blackburn, Frankie Montas, and Blade Tidwell, who's going to start Game 2 of today's doubleheader against the Milwaukee Brewers. This rotation, as it stands right now, is not a good rotation. I have no faith in anybody outside of Holmes and Peterson. And David Stearns, I'm going to say this. The way that David Stearns operates when it comes to pitching, he is a guy who does not want to commit long term to big money pitching. What I mean by that is like how the Yankees gave Garrett Cole a 10-year deal. The Diamondbacks threw the bag long term at Corbin Burns. Jacob deGrom in free agency when he left us for the Texas Rangers, multi-year deal, millions and millions. David Stearns is not the type of general manager that is going to give more than 2 years in a contract to a starting pitcher. He's not going to throw 150 to 200 million at a pitcher. What David Stearns likes to do, he likes to go cheap in the pitching market. We saw it last year. We've seen it this year. He'll take players who are either outcasts from another team or players who were once thought of as going to amount to something in the big leagues, and they've been a dud up until this point in their careers. And he'll give them a 1-year or a 2-year deal, maybe $20 to $30 million, and he'll say, we'll see what happens. If they're good, great. We got them undervalued. And if they're bad, well, we didn't pay them that much, and there's no long-term commitment. They won't be here that long. And I get it because Garrett Cole missing all of this year, Tommy John, Corbin Burns, his season's done, Tommy John, so I get it. But those were only 2 guys out of a plethora of pitchers. You can't look at 2 guys and say, oh, well, yes, it can happen to anybody. Tommy John can happen to any pitcher. But you cannot hold that against every pitcher that will ever step on a mound in a major league uniform. Now, yes, Clay Holmes, who nobody wanted to take a chance on as a starter, we did, and it's been working out. But that's only because He's been a reclamation project. A guy who failed, for lack of a better term, in the second half of last season as a closer for the Yankees, the same market. And he wanted to start. Yankees wouldn't let him start. The rest of the teams in baseball, the 29 other teams, had no interest in him as a starter. David Stearns said, come on aboard. Let him start, and it's worked out so far. But that's only because nobody else had faith in him as a starter. Stearns took a leap of faith, and it just happened to work. He gambled. It's like Las Vegas. Not the Athletics, by the way. He took a flyer on Griffin Canning, as we said. Canning, to this point, I don't know what he would have looked like the rest of the season, but he had worked up until that point he got injured. Took a flyer on a guy that most teams wouldn't have touched or would have added as a depth piece. He was a fifth starter at best, or a guy who was going to find himself pitching many innings in AAA this season if he went elsewhere. It happened to work. We saw last season Luis Severino, who had a couple of bad seasons, couldn't stay healthy, and when he was available, wasn't any good on the Yankees those last couple of years. Severino looked really good last season. Not looking good this season, but gave him a one-year deal. Didn't want to bring him back, even though he would have took a pay cut to stay with us. And now Sevy, even though he's not happy over in West Sacramento, he's got the most lucrative contract in A's history, which is crazy to think about, seeing how long that organization's been around. But this is not an athletics podcast. That's a different story for a different podcast. But then you look at the rest of the rotation: Paul Blackburn, Frankie Montas. Frankie Montas, yes, he's had success in the past. A's, Yankees, but Brewers, a guy that Stearns knows well. But these cheap deals, like, you got to do something here. I mean, yes, Kodai Senga is the ace of this team, and he's the pitcher on the staff with the longest team control, but that's because he was signed by a different regime. Stearns didn't sign Senga. Senga's been here since 2023. His rookie season, Buck Showalter was the manager. David Stearns, at this trade deadline, has to find starting pitching. It's a must. It's a must because we don't have anybody on the farm that's ready to be called up in this instance. Blade Tidwell, we've seen him, 3 or 4 times this season already? Blade Tidwell, who was our best pitching prospect that we have right now, is simply not ready. Blade Tidwell has appeared in 3 games this season, started 2 and relieved 1, and in 10 2/3 innings, he has a 10.13 ERA. He's not ready. And the more that Blade Tidwell is trotted out there on a major league mound for this New York Mets ball club, the more you are hurting this kid because he's simply not ready. And if he's not ready, then I definitely don't want Brandon Sprott up because they're going to ruin him too. Jonah Tong isn't even in AAA yet, and I've heard people have whispers that they want Jonah Tong to make his major league debut and help turn this team around. You cannot thrust a kid from AA straight to the majors and expect him to be an impact player. It just doesn't happen that way. It does not happen that way. It doesn't. The Mets got to make a move. There are enough kids on the farm to get something at this deadline. Like, it's crazy to say this, but because Stearns didn't make enough moves in the offseason, now we have to pay capital for players that we could have had for simply just money if we'd have just had a better free agent period. Yes, we signed Juan Soto, yes. But that's just, and we re-signed Pete Alonso. But those are just 2 players. And I know we're gonna have a trade deadline special coming up in a couple of weeks, but you look at some of these teams who have next to nothing to play for. The Nationals, the Pirates, the Rockies, the White Sox, the Orioles. Red Sox may become sellers in a couple of weeks after the Devers trade. The Athletics. It's not many bottom feeders to pick from because there are a lot of teams right now floating at 500 or around 500 who believe that they can be wild card teams. But the Mets got to go somewhere and get something of quality. Now, maybe David Stearns, because I know David Stearns is standings watching like I am, but maybe in a couple of weeks, the Cincinnati Reds, who are 44 and 41 entering today, maybe they have a little bad stretch, and they become sellers at the deadline. Would love to have Sonny Gray or Hunter Green. The Diamondbacks one game over 500 at 43 and 42 entering today. Maybe they have a bad couple of weeks here. They might hit a skid, become sellers. The Giants, 3-7 in the last 10. How great is that Rafael Devers trade working for them? They might slide the next couple of weeks and become sellers. The Braves and the Marlins, both at 38 wins. Marlins 11 games back, the Braves 11 and a half back. Maybe they might decide to become sellers, even though I highly doubt Atlanta would make a trade of impact and send somebody of value, maybe Chris Sale, to somebody else in the division. Look on the American League side. I mean, the Orioles, they're 11 games under 500, but they have the mindset they can make a second half run. The Mariners, they're second in the AL West, 44 and 41. Maybe they slide in the next couple of weeks, become sellers. The Rangers, the Angels are 42 and 42. I don't think that holds up over the next 2-3 weeks. They might become sellers too. Royals are sliding, 40 and 46. Seth Lugo might have a reunion. Michael Walker's been looking good, both ex-Mets. So we'll see what happens, but Stearns has to make it a point to get some type of starting pitching at this deadline. You cannot win games when your team is giving up 30 runs to one of the worst offenses in all of Major League Baseball. You just can't. And if David Stearns cannot get, and I'm not talking about a decent starting pitcher, I'm talking about an often reliable starting pitcher, then this team is doomed in the second half. Because we can't just rely on Kodai Senga when he gets back. We can't just rely on Clay Holmes. David Peterson, you never know which Peterson you're going to get start to start. But he's got to do something. Meanwhile, Juan Soto has started to heat up, but he heats up when the Mets offense, the rest of them, every last one of them goes cold. Francisco Lindor, cold. My guy, Pete Alonso, cold. Everybody else, been cold all year, continues to be cold. Mark Vientos is back, but he's cold. This Mets offense also needs to be a focus of David Stearns. He's got to get a reliable bat. You want to look at the lack of offense. And this even goes before the Pirates series, because last week, I should say, the Mets did split with the Braves. But the Braves in that series, they put up a fight, but the Mets bats had it, especially last week, Wednesday and Thursday. But this past weekend, my God, it was brutal. The Mets scored 1 run on Friday. The one RBI belonged to a Juan Soto home run. Saturday, the Mets put up just a measly 2 runs. RBIs belonging again to Juan Soto and one to Brandon Nimmo. I mean, the Mets, they had 10 hits that game, just couldn't string anything together. The Pirates had 9 runs on 12 hits. Friday, just 5. And then in Sunday's finale, the RBI was a Luis Torrens solo homer. And that was it. Some of these guys having torrid stretches. Pete Alonso, who we bragged about a couple weeks ago, how he was 22, 23 home runs shy. I mean, not home runs, sorry, RBI shy of his total from last year. He's been stuck on 65 RBIs for about over a week now. Francisco Lindor has cooled off. It and then don't even get me started on the bottom of the order, the Beatties, the Mauricios. Granted, Torrens had a solo home run the other day, but he's the equivalent. He's the offensive equivalent to Francisco Alvarez, as crazy as that sounds. Jeff McNeil's been a bright spot. Jeff McNeil at least will get a base hit every game. But this Mets offense is torrid. You look at the Mets lineup, and it just doesn't. Seeing this offense, I don't feel good. You look at the top 4 or 5 in the batting order lately: Lindor, Vientos, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, and then the rest is just like he's a guaranteed out. He's a guaranteed out. He's a guaranteed out. When I see Luis Torrens walk up to the plate, or Ronnie Mauricio, or Brett Beatty, or Starling Marte, I'm not confident. Tyrone Taylor, I'm not confident. Just like I said for the pitching, the Mets have enough capital in the farm and even on the big league roster, because somebody's going to need a young, everyday MLB player. And it's either going to be Beatty or Vientos that's going to have to go. Sad to say. But Stearns has got to go out and get a bat. There are a lot of good bats on a lot of bad teams. We talked a couple months ago about Luis Robert on the White Sox. If Baltimore continues to lose over the next couple of weeks and they become sellers, Cedric Mullins and Ryan O'Hearn can become available. We need a catcher. Granted, he's old. He killed us in one World Series back in 2015, but I'd welcome Salvador Perez. A lot of good bats on a lot of bad teams. The Pirates that just beat the bricks off of us, they said that the only 2 untouchables on their team are Paul Skeens and Andrew McCutchen. I'd take Adam Frazier or Brian Reynolds. O'Neal Cruz for the right price. Colorado Rockies, Ryan McMahon. Ryan McMahon is a slugger. I'd take him off Colorado's hands, and Colorado's not a franchise that cares about winning, apparently. So you can go and probably offer them fodder, and they'd take it, or offer them next to nothing, peanuts. They'll take it. The only team you can't look to is the Athletics, because they don't know what they're doing. They want all their young core players to go with them to Vegas. So don't expect to get a Shea Langoliers, a Brent Rooker, a Tyler Soderstrom, or anybody from that god awfully run franchise. But the Mets need a bat. They need a bat. They need a starter, and they need one more bullpen arm. That's 3 points of emphasis for this Mets team in the trade deadline, because if the Mets keep free falling like it is, there won't be any baseball in Flushing in October. When I look at the wild card standings in the National League, if the playoffs started today, the Mets would have the first wild card spot. They're 2 games up in the wild card. They have the first spot. The Brewers have the second. Cardinals have the third. And that's about it. Looking at the Mets schedule, luckily the Mets have had 2 days in a row off. We're supposed to play Milwaukee opening last night. That game got moved back due to thunderstorms in the area. So they'll have a doubleheader today, series finale tomorrow, and then the Subway Series this weekend, where the Yankees come to Citi Field. And this is the worst time to have a Subway Series when a team can't even hit or pitch. But we'll look at the Mets and who they're going to trot out here. So, starting pitchers for game 1 of the doubleheader today. The Mets against the Brewers. Clay Holmes, 8-4, 2.97 ERA. Take on the Brewers, who are throwing out Freddie Peralta, who's also 8-4 with a 2.90 ERA. So similar numbers there, but Peralta has 20 more strikeouts than Holmes. Game 2, Battle of the Rookies. Mets are sending out Blade Tidwell, which I heavily doubt is going to be a win. Going up against Jacob Mizorowski, their rookie, 3-0, 1.13 ERA. Series finale tomorrow. Former Met Jose Quintana, who's having a bounce-back year for the Brewers, 6-2, 3.30 ERA, going up against David Peterson, 5-4, 3.30 ERA. And then the dreaded Subway Series. Neither team has announced a starter for Friday or Saturday or Sunday, but with Aaron Judge and company coming to town, I'm not confident. As far as this Brewers series, I absolutely think that if the Mets can lock in, they can take 2 or 3. Jose Quintana, despite the numbers this season, I don't think that he'll have a revenge game when he comes back. Mizorowski, but he's been dominating every team he's faced so far this season, so I think that's the 1L, especially with Tidwell starting, and I think that we'll take game 1. But folks, I'm frustrated. I'm not happy. I've said all there is to say, and the only thing left to say is, let's go Mets. I'll catch you this weekend, and we'll go more in depth in the Subway Series. Until then, let's hope for some wins.